Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. Ramzan Mubarak to everyone. I've got a special guest here with me today. He's played for South Africa for more than a decade. He's played in the IPL throughout the world for more than a decade as well. But for the purposes of this channel, he is the person who was the captain last time Islamabad United won the PSL. JP Duminy. JP, how are you, my man?
Hassan bhai, what's happening? How are you?
What's happening is fasting, man. Fasting and lockdown. That's all that's happening right now.
Tough life, eh?
Not really. I think the last month has been really good for perspective in terms of who actually has a tough life and who doesn't. And I think every
Yeah,
one of us in cricket have
mm,
realized how easy our lives are.
sure. No,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, you talk about perspective, you think about reflection as well on your life and what's important. And there's a big emphasis on family, no doubt, and those close to you. But also with that, and I'm sure Pakistan will be very similar to South Africa. There's a big population that are, sort of categorized as a poor community,
Yeah.
and the amount of suffering that is going on right now, just from a pure hunger point of view, and having the
Mm.
essential goods and needs that any human being needs is heartbreaking, and I'm sure from an Islamabad point of view, I'm talking more context of team. I'm sure you guys are doing what you can for the communities, and same here.
Yeah, I mean, for most of us, we decided to like have a significant portion of our salaries over the next 3 months given to the COVID fund here. Most of us are just doing like donation work, but Roman is
Mm,
basically he's taken it to heart for some reason. He's out there every day. He's serving his community, and it's like we're proud of him. And although I do get worried about him, but I mean
mm,
that's the sort of thing. I mean that's the same with you. That's the same with a lot of guys that have come through with us because we sort of look at like try to get good guys in, and
mm,
it what happens is those guys also tend to be the sort of guys who try to give back to their communities. Because right before we went on air, you mentioned my leg. Like the last time we actually met, I had a
mm.
broken leg and you were fully fit, and in the next 2 years I've
Yeah,
been fully fit. You haven't. So I've those 2 years been, because even last
yeah.
year, the year before we wanted you in the draft, we were looking at you, and right at that moment, you had all those shoulder issues.
Yeah, I mean it's been up and down. I mean the last 2 years of my playing career, there's been some good highs, but also some challenges along the way, particularly from a just a body and fitness point of view. As you mentioned there, I think it was towards the end of 2018. For about 5 6 months,
Yeah.
I had a shoulder up, and I think October November 2018, and then that obviously took me all the way just before the World Cup. So the main perspective and sort of thought process around that was trying to get it ready for the World Cup. So I mean, the goal was achieved. I made the World Cup squad, but unfortunately, it didn't go according to plan in terms
Yeah.
of the team itself. But yeah, the 2 years has been a roller coaster, man. But now that you kind of, at the back end of it, and kind of called it quits on your playing career, you look back at it and you reflect and you think, man, so appreciative of the opportunities, and not only from a international point of view. You think about all the
Mm.
teams that I've got to play for over the years, T20 teams in particular, and the friendships formed, getting an opportunity to do this on this platform here, purely based
Mm.
on relationships, purely based on the fact that opportunities were given. So yeah, I'm very appreciative of it. Look back on my career very fondly, with some great memories, some challenges, no doubt, but
Yeah.
it shapes your character, it shapes you as a person, and yeah, you certainly reflect now and look back and think, man, what a journey it's been.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking through your numbers the last couple of days. One thing, obviously, like a lot of guys, especially in the journalism community, talk about like the promise that you had in the 5 day game, like when you had this 100 against Australia. It almost felt like that you were always chasing that. But I was looking through your T20 numbers, and
Yeah.
like so it's particularly in the IPL. So in the history of the IPL, only two foreign non-openers. So, like, if you exclude all the openers and obviously the Indians, the only foreign guys who've scored more than you are AB de Villiers and Sean Marsh. And Marsh also opened a lot of times. So you're
Mm,
pretty much the second most successful uh, foreign middle order batsman. And in the
mm,
top 30 run score, you have the sixth highest average. So I
mm.
was just thinking about that. Like, people don't tend to consider you as sort of like one of those T20 superstars, right? But like, you got those numbers.
But let me ask you this question, right? So, yes, I mean, one can be judged by numbers and
Hmm.
stats and so forth. And to be fair, I mean, as a cricketing fraternity, you kind of do look at it.
Yeah.
But for me, the most important uh, facet of me, the human being, I would like to think that, it's about impacting people's lives.
Hmm.
So, the old saying of how do you make people feel, that is what's going to make you or make people remember you or feel like
Hmm.
there was a deep connection. So if you think of, I remember fondly, coming to Islamabad, and after the first game we played, if you remember, and I think we lost that game if I'm not mistaken, or not, sorry,
Yeah.
not the first game Islamabad played, my first game, because I
Yeah.
think I
Yeah.
came
You
like two or
arrived
three
like two
games in.
games in.
Yeah, and I came, and I mean we didn't do particularly well. I think I scored like 7, but like of 20 balls or something stupid. And I remember coming to your room, and there was a few other guys there, and the thing you mentioned to me that stood out was you said, yes, there's an element of the ability, the talent that you guys sort of formulate how you pick
Hmm.
players, but you try and get good people, and you mentioned it earlier as well. And that really stood out for me, because then it made me realize that one of the main purposes that what I'm doing there is not only about performance on the field. It's how you impact people, uh, how are you going to serve your teammate.
Hmm.
And once you gave me that perspective, because one, if you come into a foreign team, and I've often
Hmm.
experienced this as an international player coming into IPL, for instance, the way you impact people immediately, no doubt through performance. But how
Hmm.
do you create longevity in relationships, and how do you create longevity in impacting people is by how you make them feel. So perspective changed quickly, and
Hmm.
I realized, yes, I'm going to give my all on the field, but try and make an impact off the field and get out of your comfort zone. Go and sit at the
Yeah.
back of the bus with the local young boys and talk to them, and see what they're about. What are their interests.
Yeah.
And I think once I changed that perspective, everything kind of just fell into place. And
Yeah.
I've kind of had that mindset going forward for a large part as well.
Yeah, like, that's one of the things that we've always like focused on. Even you look at the guys we had this year,
Mm,
and I mean, you know of quite a few of them. We had Dale Steyn this year, we had
yeah,
Colin Ingram this year. So we
yeah,
and this is one of the things. Actually, this is one thing that I wanted to ask you on a tangent here. So we had
mm,
you, we had Johan Bocha in PSL 2 as the fielding coach. We had you in PSL 3.
yeah.
Then I forgot whom we had in PSL 4. And then this year we had
You had
Ingram
Parnell, didn't you?
and yeah, we had Parney. Yeah, we had Wayne
Yeah,
Parnell. And before this year, when we were considering selecting, I was talking to Rehan, and we thought about, because we ended up getting Rassi as well, but obviously he wasn't
yeah,
available eventually.
yeah.
So he was saying that maybe we're going far too much on South Africans, and I said we've never had a bad experience with a South African yet. And we were just wondering, like, there's bound to be a dickhead somewhere, right? I mean, I know, so I sort of know about Hashim Amla as well. I know Imran Tahir now as well.
Mm,
I've known like so many of these South African guys, and I've
mm.
yet to find like the sort of guy that like every second Australian is, or every third Pakistani is. So what's the reason behind that?
I think it's just the culture we come from, or you get brought up in. Is you want to associate and uh, mingle with good people, but also you pick up good manners and values along the way. And if you think of the rich culture and history around South African cricket, which is very diverse, so you're often having to mingle and experience different cultures as well,
Mm.
from different backgrounds, and a lot of that is is a humbling experience, to be honest with you. Coming from not much, so I wouldn't say I came from not much, but the upbringing was challenging at times, and
Mm.
when you get given these amazing opportunities, you got to make sure that you value them and appreciate them, but also in the opportunity you appreciate the people around you, because you ask any uh, cricketer that has played international cricket, they will tell you there's a row of people that they will thank that have helped
Mm.
them along the way to get where they got to. So
Yeah.
it's never a lone journey. It's never someone, or it's never something that you're going to be operating by yourself. So you're always appreciative. And when you get opportunities to play for a different team, you realize that it's not just you. It was many people that put in hours and hours of work to help you with your craft and upskill, that you're always appreciative of opportunities, and it doesn't matter where it comes from.
Yeah, true, true. And the other thing, like, I just remembered that in that first conversation, the first detailed conversation that we had, one of the things I mentioned to you was that I wanted you to be like a mentor to all the young Pakistani boys, right? And
Yeah,
like
yeah,
to take them along. And actually, the reason I mentioned like we were looking at you the last 2 years as well was like Asif has had a good year since that, but Hussein's never had the season since he batted with you. Like the way he batted with you, I don't think he's batted that well, at least in the PSL since then. And
sure.
you even took both of them. I obviously I it wasn't you taking them, but I'm sure you recommended them when they went to the Amzansi as well, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So like
yeah,
that's the thing that I was wondering about, that relationship, like from your side and from their side, like how does that build? Because neither of them are like exactly the most loquacious or the most like the most fluent in English as such, right?
yeah, yeah. Probably more Hassan than Asif, to be honest.
Mm.
But I think the connection happened when you kind of realize that there's this amazing talent, and trying to identify the personality attached to this talent now, right? So, and I
Mm.
think a lot of coaches would think this way as well. Is right. What is the goal with a player? The goal of a player is to get the best out of them, and you have to understand the personality, the talent, the skill set. How do you marry all that and bring the
Mm.
best out of them? So there might be an approach where it's a more of a harder approach to bring out the best in somebody, but some people need an arm around the shoulder and almost
Mm.
just a reminder of how good they actually are, and you kind of bring out that belief in themselves, because a lot of the times, and I was very much like this in terms of my personality, I had self-doubt. I lacked
Mm.
the belief at times in my ability, and it was, you then try and reach out to people that know that you possess this certain talent. How do you attach yourself to somebody that brings it out in you? And there
Mm.
are a handful of coaches that had that ability with with me itself. So with them, it was trying to identify that, and how do I help as their teammate to bring out the best in them. And I think that was, it was an ongoing journey, because you're trying to understand the person in the beginning, and there is the language barrier at times, but you just realize
Mm.
that they just need love, man. They just
Yeah.
need to be felt like they're backed. And
Yeah.
you had a great coach in Prof Dino as well, who was very skilled in communicating with people. So it was just trying to add like an added service to that. How do
Mm.
I communicate with them that I know is going to bring out the best in them? So yeah, those are the kind of dynamics that one has to work through.
And like, how much of that came from, like, I was just wondering, I was talking to Dale about this as well. Like, for
Yeah.
somebody like yours, to a lesser extent, Faf, at least Faf knew AB, but a lot of the guys that came into the South African team, say between 2008 and 2013,
Mm,
I'm sure it would have been like super hard for them, because you're walking into a team which is already the best in the world, which
yep.
is has like seven world class players, like between Amla, AB, Smith, Stain, Morkel. Like there's just so many guys. Trying to find your own niche in that, trying to
Yeah.
find like trying to gain respect in that dressing room. How hard is that?
So I think the beauty of that era is we went through a very much a big transitional cultural change. And it
Okay.
happened around, maybe Dale mentioned this, around 2009, 2010. We
Hmm.
went on this cultural camp where we tried to dig a little bit into the roots of South Africa. Where did we come from? How did we get to a point?
I just
Did
mentioned
he?
he mentioned it only once, and that was when he was mentioning something that Hashim Amla said about the dog when his dog told like a really uh, emotional
Story.
story.
All
I
right.
don't know if I don't know if you remember that or not.
No, I don't remember that story,
Okay.
but we went on this very important camp, I would say,
Mm.
where we digged a little bit into the history of South Africa, what we went through in terms of the apartheid era, and then coming into international cricket in 91, 92, and then what was that like for South Africa? What did we play for? What did we represent? And we needed to find a different sort of thought process in terms of representing something more than ourselves. And that's
Okay.
when we brought up or came up with this concept of Protea fire and
Hmm.
playing or representing something more than yourself. So you have this idea of representing 50, 60 million people. What does that look
Hmm.
like? What does that feel like? The word that comes up for me now, and we spoke about it a lot back then, was resilience. So if you think of the history of South Africa, you think about us as a team, we're very much a resilient bunch. So how can we
Yeah.
use that as a strength going forward? And I think that was like a starting point for us from a Graham being the leader, the captain of the team, coupled with the coaches that we went through in the last decade. They all brought their different elements to it, but they
Hmm.
understood the root of who we were and who we are. And that was very much something that stemmed through that era of 2010 to 2013. So anybody that came into the side never felt like, oh my goodness, I need to find my place here, or the only way I'm going to be accepted is through performance. No, there was a
Hmm.
big shift in thinking that anybody that comes into this team, it is our responsibility that whoever's in the team already plays in the team. It is our responsibility to make them feel part of it before they even walk out onto that field. And that
Hmm.
was a very much a shift. And as you mentioned, you had world class players in their prime of their careers at the time, but yet they were there to serve the team, in many ways. And that was a
Hmm.
very much a big mindset shift that we needed to go through. And I think now, even now in the last 5 years, you will see again now going into the 2020s, there will need to be some kind of mindset shift and tweak possibly to that culture because it's a
Hmm.
different era coming into play now.
And is that the reason, like we're seeing, like we've seen Misbah join the Pakistan team, or we've seen
Mm,
Rahul Dravid join the BCCI, but like or Saurav Ganguly as well. But like what
mm.
we're seeing from South Africa, like you're so involved with your home team, the Cape team, and now you've got Boucher and Smith and all these guys coming into the Cricket South Africa team. Is that because like that there's that sense of like togetherness that you feel like you need to go back and serve the cricket team, the cricket culture as such?
I think twofold. I think it's a great opportunity from a job point of view, but also you've got years and years of experience in the
Hmm.
names that you mentioned that have the opportunity to serve the game of cricket and particularly serve the next generation coming through. And
Yeah.
you mentioned guys like Boucher, Smith, Ashwell Prince, who's the coach here.
Hmm.
The guys that have performed at the high level for a long period of time and kind of understand the expectations and responsibility that comes with playing international cricket and just high level cricket on its own.
Hmm.
So how can we part that knowledge firstly, but also put structures in place that help guys develop quicker? Because
Hmm.
that's ultimately what it's about, is how can we put systems and structures in place in our development programs that are going to help them fast track, particularly the talented ones, and
Hmm.
hopefully be ready, at a young age, ready to perform at a consistent level, in international cricket, and that's ultimately what you want. So
Hmm.
you need to find a good balance between administrators as well as coaches and organizations that come together and understand that this is a collective thing that we need to do. And
Hmm.
as you said, you've got years and years of experience in Misbah and Rahul Dravid and and all the names that you were mentioning there, it's essential to have them involved in the structures because they understand the pitfalls. They understand what the requirements are to be
Hmm.
sustainable at the elite level.
Yeah, true, true. Let's go back to cricket because we're talking about administration. We can talk about that for hours, but I don't think anyone of the viewers would want to talk about it. Two things in particular that I wanted to talk to you about. One, this guy Wakas, he does the best videos of especially Babar Azam, but in general on Twitter. He asked me
Mhm.
like you succeeded like AB and Herschel Gibbs as the backward point fielder for the South African team. So
Right.
his question was, is that something that you develop or is that something that you're like naturally born with, like that sort of position, the requirements of that, the athleticism
Mm.
required for that, or is that because it's such a specialist position that is something that you can work on?
I think it's two things for myself personally. I think that is something that I focused on a lot at a young age already. And I guess you kind of followed in the footsteps of your heroes in those positions, like a John T. Rhodes and a Herschel Gibbs, as you mentioned there, and kind of watched them very closely
Hmm.
around how they went about it and the things that they did. Unfortunately, at a young age, I got to play with Herschel, and he was one of my
Hmm.
childhood heroes. And I could kind of engage in conversations. What do you do in these situations to try and get better here and there and there? And then it was something that just kind of fell into place where AB became captain and he needed to be in a position where he could speak to the bowlers more. And then, there was this opportunity to go there. And, it's a position in the game that you always feel like you're the leader of the pack
Yeah.
because that's ultimately where, if the bowlers are bowling well, put it that way, that's where the ball naturally goes.
Yeah.
So it was something that I took very seriously. I worked very hard at. John T. Rhodes was the fielding coach for a while with South Africa as well as the Mumbai Indians. So I did a lot of work with him in terms of that position, getting the technical aspects of that position right. But yeah, it's something that I thoroughly enjoyed, man. So if that's something that he enjoys and really wants to get better at, is you know try and identify certain players that are good at it, see what they do well, and also obviously you're gonna have to work at that craft as well.
Yeah, true. And regarding like working on the craft, like the main numbers that I was mentioning earlier, you having like the third best middle order average in IPL history, like
Mm,
and even with us, and I was looking at those, and you've got like extraordinary numbers against spin in particular, like an averaging excess of 65 and stuff like that. And when
mm,
we like when Asians tend to consider like players of spin, they generally don't, unless it's like a Kane Williamson or somebody like
mm,
that, they
mm,
don't generally rate like
mm.
players of Spain from outside Asia. So,
Yeah,
what was the secret behind your success with that?
the easiest answer to that is learn to sweep well. Um,
Okay.
and the reason I say that, I worked with a coach back here in Cape Town for a while, Shukri Conrad, who used to be our Cobras coach for a while, and he was
Hmm.
of the opinion, when it comes to playing spin, doesn't matter which way the ball's turning, whether you're
Hmm.
left hand and the off spin is bowling, and a lot of coaches will go the route of you only sweep when the ball is turning into you. And
Yeah.
he had an opposite opinion. He was like, it doesn't matter which way the ball's turning. You just need to get into a strong position, and you can hit the ball at any time from a
Hmm.
sweep shot point of view. So once I developed that skill better, and felt a lot more confident in playing it, the thing is,
Hmm.
I know also I operate on the other side as well. So I'm a spin bowler. So I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
I know if I'm bowling to a batter that sweeps well, you
Hmm.
always feel like you're on the back foot every time.
Yeah.
And 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 that I also had in the back of my mind. So if I knew
Hmm.
that I could sweep a spinner really well, he will feel like he's on the back foot. So that's something
Hmm.
that I practiced a lot. But also being able to use my feet well, know when to use my feet, trying to manipulate the field as best as possible. So there's an element of risk to it as well.
And how
But
much of
it's
that was like being in the IPL, especially playing for like teams
mm,
like Mumbai or Hyderabad, who've got like these Indian legends? Like, how
yeah.
much of the success had to do with like talking to these guys who were like all-time players of spin?
Yeah, no, that helped as well. But also like talking to guys like Harbhajan, for instance, who I
Hmm.
sort of modeled my action on at a young age, and speaking to
Okay.
him about what is his thought processes in bowling, and trying to
Hmm.
use that in a reverse way of as a batter. Okay, if you're thinking that, I'm going to try and do this and do that. So it's about kind of having conversations with some of the best in the world as well, and see what their thought processes are.
Hmm.
Having opportunities to play with guys like Sachin and so forth as well. Kumar Sangakkara, one of the best players of spin, I believe, as a left-hander. I got to play with him, and also speaking to him, and his main thing was the later you move from your crease, the better it is for you, because you then
Hmm.
have the opportunity, or the bowler doesn't have the opportunity to adjust, but also you need
Yeah.
to try and manipulate. He was one of the best manipulators of field. He didn't try and hit the ball for a boundary. He just tried to
Yeah.
hit it into a gap, and all of a sudden there was field changes that allowed him to play the stronger shots that he wanted to play. So that
Hmm.
was awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
Ruman right easier on online here.
Yeah. He just said JP the legend. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
What a legend.
I mean that year we had like, I mean, I had a bad injury, but like nothing compared to what Rumi had.
Yeah,
Anyway,
same man.
so finishing off, like I'll just do a rapid fire sort of a thing.
Sure.
So who's the best bowler that you faced? And like
Uh,
throughout your career.
best. Say again.
Throughout your career, who's the best bowler that you faced?
Yeah, the toughest bowler I faced was probably Andrew Flintoff in his prime. And the reason
Okay.
why I say that, it wasn't his express pace, but he had this ability to hit the bat hard, very high up on your bat.
Hmm.
His action allowed him to get some good bounce. He was
Hmm.
quite a tall guy, but I just found him extremely difficult to get away.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And who's the best batsman that you've bowled to?
Best batsman, I mentioned him earlier, Kumar Sangakkara, man. He just didn't know how to bowl to. You will move a field a certain way, then all of a sudden you'll just kind of manipulate it, and it's not even the right ball to hit there, but somehow he manages to get it there. So he
Yeah.
was he was quite a tough one to bowl to.
And like, if you'd been told like at the start of when you started off
Mm.
that you wouldn't have a double hundred by the time you finish, but you'd have a hat trick, how much would
Yeah,
you have believed that?
no, I wouldn't have believed that at all, actually. And I mean, to do it in a quarterfinal of a World Cup itself,
Yeah.
that is something that'll always stand out as one of my greatest performances in not only a
Mm.
World Cup but in my cricket career. And I say that also with context to the fact that we had never won
Yeah,
a
that's the
knockout
only
phase
one, right?
game. Yeah, we had never won a knockout phase game in a World Cup.
Mm.
So that was quite a special moment for us.
Yeah, I'm not gonna talk to you about the World Cup or anything like that. I
Oh,
think I've
thank
been
you.
around enough South Africans to know that. And to finish off, who's like a couple of things. First,
Mm.
the uh, in reference to the IPL or coming through, who was the last guy that you felt overawed by? The first time that you met them or anything like that?
In IPL,
No, in general, in like in cricket, that is.
probably Sachin. So this was in 2009,
Hmm.
and I must give you a context how this happened. So that was the year South Africa hosted the IPL,
Yeah.
and we had just finished a South African versus Australian series. I literally had
Hmm.
to fly the next morning from Joburg down to Cape Town to play that day. And the first time I met Sachin was literally in the bus on the way to the field, and I was playing with him. I was 24 years old, this young boy, and it was an overwhelming experience, to be honest. And it wasn't only him; it was Harbhajan Singh, it was Zahir Khan, Sean Pollock was the coach. Yeah, so there was quite a high-profile setup there. So that was quite a cool experience.
And who's the funniest guy that you've ever had like in a dressing room?
By far, Morne Moko.
Really?
He's got this dry sense of humor
Okay.
that there's never a dull moment with him. And probably another one that comes to mind is Neil McKenzie. Yeah,
Hmm.
he's one of the funniest men I know. So
No,
probably
but
those two guys.
more than like I was talking to Ingram and Stain about it, and like in every one of their stories, what came through was that Monet, especially in general when playing cricket, whether that's
Yeah,
Test or otherwise, he was way too intense. So I didn't
Well,
expect that for him to be
that's
like
on the
coming
playing
as
side
such.
of things, right? So I think that's a self-reflection for himself. He was very
Hmm.
intense with his own game, but
Okay.
outside of that, I absolutely love the human being.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. And finally, who's the best captain that you've played under? I think that's a pretty easy question.
Why is it an easy one? You answered it for me then.
You played for like a decade under Graham Smith, man. You guys went like 7 years unbeaten away from home. Like, there's not
Yeah.
a lot of teams that can say that. Yeah,
No, I
okay,
mean
tell me
he's
apart from
definitely,
him.
apart from him. Yeah, I really enjoyed Faf. I really enjoyed
Okay.
playing under Faf. So I want to mention one outside of international cricket,
Mm.
and I mentioned him as a batter, which was Kumar Sangakkara. So
Yeah.
he was my captain for Deccan Chargers in 2011, 2012.
Hmm.
So I thoroughly enjoyed him. Yeah,
Yeah. Fair enough. Hussein says, "Hey, skipper."
yeah, there he is.
Yeah, talking about him. Anyway, so finishing off, anything that you want to say? Actually, one other thing. So you were like the one of the first batches of guys who came to Pakistan for the PSL, right? Now
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
got like this year we had what 50, 60 guys all in Pakistan for a whole month. So
Mm.
when you were coming there, like what was your mindset at that time, and like what was going through your mind, because that wasn't a thing that was as such a done thing at the time.
Yeah, look, I mean, there are kind of doubts around it because you kind of realize the landscape of what's happening around you. Um, you know what was happening in Pakistan at the time, but I was quite confident in the measures that were put in place for us for our safety. So
Hmm.
I went there, you know, pretty comfortable, and I knew that there was some kind of sort of leadership mentality that I had at that point in time. One,
Hmm.
captaining the team, but also just from a international point of view, you kind of led the way
Hmm.
in people coming back, and the language that you use in that time needed to be was important, and keeping it positive and making sure that you know that you're telling lies or anything like that. It's just that
Yeah.
we felt very safe. Obviously, the security was next level. I mean, shutting
Yeah.
down roads, bulletproof bus, you name it. Um, but I mean, I've been to Pakistan before a few times, and you know, there's obviously a rich history and a culture within cricket. And
Hmm.
I love the fact that we got to go back there, even if it was just for 2 days, and to be able to win it there as well and experience
Yeah.
that was pretty awesome.
And were you surprised when we handed you with the captaincy? Because like generally, like the foreign players, do, that's
Yeah,
not the sort of thing like franchises go with, right?
yeah, I was a little bit surprised, but I, you know, at that point in time, I'd given or I'd gotten a few opportunities to captain various
Yeah.
teams, and I really enjoyed it. I really felt that this brought out the best in my game as well. Just that element of leadership. So I was overwhelmed, but also appreciated that you know whoever made those decisions kind of
Hmm.
saw that leadership quality within me, and I knew it wasn't something that I needed to or wanted to take lightly. And again, it was about how do I bring out the best in my team, not only about myself. I took the
Yeah.
focus off myself, and by doing that, it kind of freed me up just to play naturally.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like when this tournament started, like Misbah was the captain, Rumi was the vice captain. Rumi got
Mm,
injured,
mm,
so and Misbah was obviously going through his stuff. So we
yep,
sat down and we had this discussion over it. Like we basically were like, you were already, I think, right before that, you'd captain South Africa in the T20s
yep,
as well,
yep,
and our
yeah, yeah,
decision was basically that we'll see how he like fits along with the rest of the dressing room,
mm,
and if he fits in, then he's the vice captain. And
yeah.
uh, I feel like obviously we've always had like really good foreign guys, but when I think back at that team, especially the PSL3, obviously when you win, it feels better in hindsight. But when
Yep.
you had Chadwick, we had Andre, we had you, we had Dronks, and all four of you, it almost felt like you were as Pakistani as any of the local boys.
Yeah, again, it comes back to very much a conscious process that needed to unfold.
Hmm.
And I spoke about going consciously to the back of the bus because
Yeah.
naturally, what you want to do is you get into a comfort zone, and naturally what our comfort zone is, we kind of mingle with the overseas, and which I did. I mean, don't get me wrong, I spent a lot of time with them and I got great relationships with all of them. But there was an element where I realized that I need to put myself out there, for one, for them to understand who I am, but more importantly, for me to understand who they are. And if you've got that close relationship off the field, you know, there's more possibility of playing for one another on the field, you know, particularly in crunch times and when the games are on the line, that you can rely on one another in those times.
Yeah, you sort of build that trust, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it starts off the field. It starts with authentic relationships. And that generally happens at the back of the bus, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it always does, regardless of whether that's cricket or otherwise. So
Yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
man, and talking about like those sort of relationships, like we've been in contact on and off for like 2 years. We haven't had a chat. I think we should do this again. I've
100%.
missed talking to
Anytime.
you, in all honesty.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's good to connect again, brother.
All right, see ya, man, and say salam for all the Islamabad fans, I guess.
Yeah, salam, guys, and wishing you all the best over the month of Ramadan. And yeah, we're all hoping and praying for great success over this period. And I know it's a difficult time for a lot of people. So wishing everybody well, lots of health and strength through this time. And hopefully we get to catch up soon again.
Yeah, and stay home, everyone.
Yeah, 100%. That's important. Stay home.
Yeah. Okay. See ya, guys.
Cheers, buddy.